Hello Internet, Seth Skorkowski, and today we're going to discuss bad players. Now I normally do these type of videos with some sort of list, the 5 worst players or 5 awful players, that sort of thing. And in those I usually rapid fire through them, giving each about 2 to 3 minutes, and then add in some sort of outrageous and hopefully humorous skit. But this video we're only going to discuss one, and the reason for that is because it's something that can't easily be identified in just 2 to 3 minutes. These are what I refer to as role-play terrorists. And the short description is that these are players, or game masters, who try to hide intentionally bad behavior behind the guise that they're simply role-playing. Many of you might have heard their battle cry before, "That's what my character would do," or "I'm just being in character." The problem with trying to identify one of these in a skit is that on the surface, their behavior might not actually appear bad. It might even appear good in some cases, or it might just appear like it's bad role-playing, but it doesn't look like it's something that's too terribly bad. It requires context in order to identify it. It's almost like when lawmakers are trying to define obscenity for different laws like that. The old, "I can't tell you what it is, but I know it when I see it." One of the more familiar examples of this sort of player is that thief that's always robbing the party blind, steals the cleric's holy item, steals the wizard's spell book, steals the fighter's sword, effectively crippling the party just to get some laughs, and then when everybody gets mad at him, they just simply smile and say, "Don't be mad at me, I'm just playing in character." Now, maybe they are playing in character and that character is a dick. And as a character, it's not going to be in the party that long because the character is a dick. But more often than not, we're really just looking at a jerk player. In D&D, where we have alignments, we don't have alignments in all the other games out there, roleplay terrorists are the ones that are most likely going to be the ones that go, lawful or chaotic stupid. But really only in those cases where they can cause the maximum amount of damage to everybody else's enjoyment of the game. Another example is one that I've touched on in a previous video, and that's with what I refer to as over-reluctant heroes. Reluctant heroes who then take it just a little bit too far. After passing through the screaming swamp, you reach the obsidian cave. Yeah, I'm not going in there. Why not? My character doesn't have a reason to. Because you've been sent by the king to rescue his sister? I don't care about the king or his sister. My elf is 300 years old. I was kicking it before his grandpappy was alive. I don't honor the titles of these short-lived human monkeys. What about all that treasure he promised to pay us when we get her back? I don't care about that. I can get treasure somewhere else. Fine. What about killing the dragon knight that took her and getting all of his items? Well, he never did anything to me. And until one of you guys gives me a reason why I should, I am not going in there. On the surface, it appears that that player has a point. They do need a character motivation. I agree, they do. But the warning bells start ringing as more and more reasons are given to this player why their character should be motivated for something, and none of them are ever good enough. For a normal player, there is going to be a right answer that will send them off on the adventure. But for a roleplay terrorist, there's not going to be. It's a lot like cheating at Battleship. My older brother taught me this when I was 9 years old. Cheating at Battleship is extremely easy. Whenever your opponent calls out a spot like B9, if one of your ships happens to be there, you simply scoot it over to a spot that they haven't called out yet and tell them that they missed you. This is when we go from a player who is role-playing to a terrorist who is now holding the game hostage for their own enjoyment under the pretext that they're role-playing, because no motivation that you give them is ever going to be good enough. Now for character motivation, I have an agreement with my own players. I as the game master is going to provide them with a hook or a solid reason why they should go on that next adventure. However, if that reason is not good enough for one of the players, that player must then assist me in helping find a reason that would motivate their character. Many people believe that character motivation is just something that's strictly black or white. Whether it's a role-playing character or a character that you're writing about, motivation is something that you can find if you just change your approach and how you look at it. We do this in real life. Have you ever had that friend who's going to do something just remarkably stupid, and they know it's a stupid thing to do, like getting back together with a toxic ex or something like that, and now they're trying to justify this terrible action that they're about to do, and not just to you, but also to themselves, because it's something that they are already planning on doing, but now they're just trying to work it out in their brain as the reason they're going to do it, because the real reason they don't want to admit. So when a normal player finds their character in a situation where they're supposed to do or not supposed to do something that they normally would or wouldn't do, all they can do is just simply change their approach as how they look at it, and that's how they can find whatever their motivation is. My favorite example of this done very well is from Conan the Destroyer of all movies. There's a scene where all the heroes are storming the evil wizard's castle, and they realize they have to jump down into some water and swim in order to come up underneath the lair, and everyone is fine with this except for Malik, their thief. He argues for a bit, but everyone just goes on without them. And he leaves them standing there, and he realizes that he's now totally alone, and he just says,
"They need me."
So in a game context, Malik found his motivation. Now, whether that motivation was really because he was afraid and he didn't want to be alone, or maybe because he really did think that all the other characters needed him, or maybe because he wanted to get an equal share of all the wizard's loot once he knew Conan was killed him, that doesn't matter. The reason that he does it doesn't matter. All that's important is he found his motivation. He has now joined the rest of the players on the adventure. Now, a roleplay terrorist will not do this. In fact, they're going to do the opposite of this. Often they might twist their characters' motivations and alignment interpretations around, just come up with more reasons not to do the right thing. Be that now screwing over the party, antagonizing the other players, or just a refusal to join the adventure that everybody else is wanting to do. Now, just to be clear, I'm in no way saying that a PC that's not wanting to go on the adventure or go into the dungeon is a bad thing. Let me give you an example. A few years ago, we were playing Call of Cthulhu, and one of the PCs in the group is a new character to the group. Player was old, character was new, and all the PCs, they had followed all the proper clues, and they had figured out that the next step in the investigation required that they broke into a building. Now, this new character was a lawyer. He was very law-abiding, and once they got to the building, he's like, "No, guys, I'm not going in there. I'm not going to break the law." And the other PCs are trying to argue with him and trying to explain their reasoning, but this character's new. He doesn't believe in magic and the supernatural and all this mumbo-jumbo like that, and he can't come up with any sort of logical reason why he would possibly break the law and enter this building. So finally, he just says, "Look, guys, I'm not going to stop you from doing it, but I'm not going to do it. So I'm just going to stand over here across the street. I'm going to do lookout. That way you guys don't go to jail. Maybe I'll do a distraction or something. That way you get away, but do not ask me to go in there. There is no reason at all why I would do this." Now, it's at this point that the player ends up looking up at me, and he very sincerely apologizes with this, "I'm sorry, I don't mean to be hurting the party or the adventure or anything like that." So then I had to assure him that no, he wasn't at all. In fact, he was being so perfectly in character for that situation that I was very proud of him. I gave him an inspiration token, which is a mechanic I stole from D&D. It's not really in Call of Cthulhu, just as my way of encouraging that sort of level of role play, and also to let him know that no, I wasn't mad at him at all because I knew what his intention was. His intention wasn't to screw the game up for everyone. Now, a roleplay terrorist, on the other hand, in that situation, would have then taken it one step further. Like they might have called the cops to prevent his friends from breaking the law, or done something like that. That way it would have prevented them from going inside this place that his character already decided is not going into. So the actions of a roleplay terrorist don't necessarily make the crime of being a roleplay terrorist. It's the intent behind the actions. That's where the problem lies. So let's talk about what motivates them. Well, maybe they're a bully. If their character is always picking on another character, is this something that they do in real life? Do they normally pick on other players and now they're just simply carrying this over into the imaginary game? Maybe it's a passive-aggressive move. Is this player angry at something or someone else at the table and now they're just lashing it out under the guise that they're simply role-playing? Maybe one of the other players did some sort of perceived slight against them. Maybe they hit the last of the chips. Maybe they're roommates and they're late on rent. Whatever it is doesn't matter, but now they're going to be sabotaging the fun for everybody else at the table, and all the while pretending that it's just role-playing and trying to act like they're not doing anything wrong. Maybe they enjoy the spotlight. One thing that does happen when people start playing like dicks is that they become the focus of everybody's attention. So the reason their character is now causing problems is just to become a star, or it's about control. An interesting trait that many roleplay terrorists have is a need for control, and as long as their character is doing what their character does, they have full control of the game. Or maybe they just simply enjoy watching the world burn. They're a jerk player, and the chaos of derailing a game at the expense of everyone else's enjoyment is how they get off. So now we've discussed what a roleplay terrorists do and why, let's discuss how to identify them. Now, this part can be a little bit tricky. Again, it could be that they're sincerely role-playing, maybe not well, but there's no ill intention behind it. So how do we tell the difference between somebody who's role-playing and it might not be the way everybody enjoys, and then somebody who is intentionally role-playing in a bad way in order to hurt somebody else's good time? And there's a few ways to identify it. One, is this a pattern? Does this player always have characters that cause problems under the guise of I'm just being in character? Now this, of course, is something that's going to reveal itself in time the longer that you play with this player. But if you have 6 players and one of them, no matter what character they're playing or which campaign it's in, is always the one that seems to be causing problems, then you know that it's not the character that they're playing, it's really just the player. 2, what's going on outside the game. You know if there is tension between two players due to some sort of outside factor, or you know that that player just arrived at the game that day a bit grumpy. The attitudes around the table can affect what's happening inside the game. 3, what kind of person are they? Are they normally a control freak or an attention hog? Are they normally a bully? It's not that far of a leap that these traits are now affecting their playing inside the game. And 4, and this is the easiest way of identifying it.
You know, I should get a boon or some experience points or something because I'm doing such a good job playing in character.
Very often they gloat. It's not just enough that they're sabotaging the enjoyment for other people, but some roleplay terrorists just have to push it that one step further and try to get some sort of kudos for doing it. Okay, so let's say that you've determined that you do have a roleplay terrorist in your group. What are you going to do about it? Good question. Now, if the player is pulling a my character wouldn't do X sort of situation where they lock their heels in the ground and they refuse to make any sort of action, call them out on it, not by asking what they won't do, but ask them what they will do. Ask them what does motivate them. If they don't want to go into the adventure because the reason isn't good enough, ask them what is a good enough reason for them to go into it. Put them in a position where they have to commit to something and stop dancing around and letting you try to figure it out and making a whole game about it where everybody else at the table is essentially begging this person to play with them. But that's a very limited and very specific example, not a good example. So what if they're a bully? What if they're just sabotaging the other players at every single turn? What if the only consistency in their character is that that character is always causing problems and always being at odds with the rest of the game and everyone else's enjoyment? Obviously, the first thing you should do is talk to them. Not just the game master and the player, but the other players at the table should feel that they could be involved in this. Definitely check with your game master. Depends on your entire group dynamics, of course, but I always say that gaming is a group effort, and you're definitely going to have a group effort if you're going to be trying to do this against a game master, because sometimes game masters can be roleplay terrorists too. Sorry, guys. But the group should discuss this with the person, the offending player. Tell them that what they're doing is hurting the enjoyment of the rest of the group. Make them aware of it. They might not be aware. This is something that usually newer players do, and they don't really see the full consequences of their actions. However, and I'm going to be honest with this one, there is a very high potential when you talk to the problem player that this is not going to be going well. Remember, this is a player who is intentionally hurting the game and trying to hide this behind the guise that they're role-playing. They might just stick to their grounds and keep insisting that, no, what they're doing is role-playing, you're just overreacting. And some of them might even believe this. Remember when I talked earlier about how people change their perceptions in order to justify some sort of bad behavior? Well, the roleplay terrorists will do this in real life, where they try to twist their perceptions around to where they've now convinced themselves that what they're doing isn't harmful at all. What they're doing is really just good role-playing. Or maybe they haven't rationalized it at all. Maybe they're just intentionally jerk players and they enjoy being a dick to everybody and ruining the good time because that's the only way that they can really enjoy themselves. Honestly, all you can do is talk to them about it. After that, it's completely up to them. A roleplay terrorist can completely suck the enjoyment out of an entire group, and it can cause other members of your group to end up peeling off and leaving because so-and-so is always ruining the fun for everybody. Over the years, there's only two real outcomes that I've had when dealing with a roleplay terrorist. The first one, they outgrow it. They realize that what they're doing is actually causing problems within the group. They don't actually want to cause problems inside the group and everyone's enjoyment, so they stop. That is most cases, is they simply outgrow it, and this is something that you look back on and say, man, remember when you used to do this? And two, well, let's just say that I don't play with any of those players anymore. It stinks, I know, because those players were my friends. And a lot of them still are my good friends, but I just can't play with them anymore. I would rather play with somebody who is there to have a good time and make sure that everybody else around them at the table has a good time, rather than play with somebody who's really only there for their own personal enjoyment, even at the expense of everyone else's enjoyment. But either way, no group should have to deal with a dick player.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you want to see some more of our stuff like RPG philosophy and game reviews, just hit that subscribe button. Till next time, amigos, y'all have a great day.